An ancient battle played out in the sky every night. A battle between the god Ra and a force so evil and so chaotic that its mere existence threatened to cast the world into an eternal shadow. This was no simple myth. To the ancient Egyptians, this was a battle for cosmic survival. Ra, the god of the sun, fought a battle against Apep, a giant serpent that wanted to swallow him whole. Every dawn as the sun rose, so did hope. But each night, the darkness returned. A battle that seemed endless, yet inevitable. But what if this fight wasn't just a battle between two gods? What if this was something much deeper? Something that continues to shape our world, even today. As we've covered in this channel before, in the beginning, there was only this huge void. From that void, Ra emerged. But Ra was not the only one. From that void, Apep, the giant serpent, also emerged. Apep was a force of destruction, a force of chaos, and the sole purpose of Apep was to devour Ra. But before we dive deeper into this myth, let me just clarify something right off the bat. You might have heard the term Apophis. Apophis was actually the Greek word for Apep, so this was a completely Hellenized version of the word. But exactly how did this happen? As the Greek Empire spread, its influence reached Egypt, especially after the conquest of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. The Greeks, with their love for language and philosophy, began to encounter Egyptian mythology. The Greeks, for the most part, did not really translate things. They simply adapted them. For example, the Egyptians did have a P sound, but their writing system didn't always make it easy for outsiders to pin down pronunciation. When the Greeks came across, the chaotic serpent god known in Egypt as Apep became Apophis. So it wasn't really about just matching letters. It was also about fitting that myth into a version or a mold that the Greeks could interpret and understand. Greek influence did not only extend to how the word sounded, but it also gave a completely different tone to how the serpent was viewed. In Egyptian mythology, Apep was viewed as a serpent of destruction, but it also helped to maintain some sort of a cosmic order. For the ancient Egyptians, it was all about balance, but for the Greeks, Apophis became the ultimate symbol of evil. This shift wasn't accidental. The Greeks, after centuries of myth-making, were highly influenced by their own understanding of divine beings. In Greek mythology, the Titans represented the primordial chaos, and oftentimes they had no purpose beyond allowing for that new set of gods, that orderly new set of gods, to overrule them and take their place. The battle against Cronus did exactly that. It allowed for the formal partition of the domains of the sky, the ocean, and the underworld by Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. When the Greeks came into contact with Egyptian mythology, they applied this same framework to Apep. They saw him as a force that threatened to undo everything, something beyond mere disruption, something malevolent. So it was in this context that Apep became Apophis in the Greek world. So every evening at sunset, Ra began his perilous journey through Duat, the Egyptian underworld. But this wasn't just a metaphor for nightfall. To the ancient Egyptians, it was a sacred voyage, one that had to succeed or the sun would never rise again. Ra sailed across the dark waters in a solar barque, a divine ship that carried him and a host of gods through the 12 gates, one for each hour of the night. Each gate was a realm filled with trials, guardians, and hidden dangers, but none of them were as fearsome as what awaited Ra in the deepest part of the underworld, Apep himself. And Apep wasn't just a snake, it was a cosmic serpent of enormous size. It was often described as hundreds of feet long, with eyes that paralyzed, and a roar that shook the stars. And this battle was not really just symbolic. For the ancient Egyptians, this was very real. It happened every day, and priests would perform rituals to aid Ra in his fight against Apep. When Ra reached the hour of Apep, the clash began. The serpent would rise from the black waters and coil around the solar barque, attempting to halt its journey and plunge the world into eternal night. But Ra wasn't really alone in this fight. A host of gods would travel with him. Set, the god of the storms and violence, would serve as Ra's main bodyguard, because only chaos could battle chaos. Mehen, who was a serpent deity who wrapped himself around the barque to shield it. And there were other gods like Isis and Thoth and Maat that lent magic and wisdom to balance the fight a little bit. Set would often be depicted spearheading the attack, wielding a harpoon or spear to drive Apep back into the void. Sometimes stories said that Ra was the one who defeated Apep. In other stories, it was Set who defeated Apep, but essentially every night it was the same thing. In the morning, the sun would emerge victorious, but at night, the cycle would begin anew. This is because Apep could never really die. He was part of the very fabric of existence, so he could only be repelled for so long. That's why this myth is so powerful, because it's not a final victory. It's a reminder that order has to be fought for every single day. And the ancient Egyptians were deeply involved in this fight. People would carry amulets with symbols to be protected against the serpent's chaos. They built statues of Apep only to destroy them later, so a symbolic triumph over Apep. So in a sense, they were not rituals, they were also declarations, and a reminder that humanity had a big role to play in the balance of the universe. So you can kind of put yourself in the mind of an ancient Egyptian and realize that whenever we say that each day is precious, to them it actually was. So to them, Apep wasn't really just a story, it was a warning and a reminder that chaos, even in its most destructive form, could never be fully destroyed. Apep may have been defeated every day, but there was always this threat that maybe tomorrow we won't get so lucky. Because chaos, much like fear, can never be truly destroyed. It just waits, lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again. But the ancient Egyptians like Ra knew something very well. No matter how dark it gets, the sun will rise again. Thank you so much for joining me for today's tale. If you had fun, learned anything new today, please consider subscribing to the channel, also dropping a comment below or liking the video, sharing the video, that helps a ton. Remember, it's a very small button for you and a gigantic leap for my channel. Until the next tale, farewell, and may the gods smile upon you.